Hey everybody, welcome back to another Integrative Life Center webinar. I've got a very experienced and accomplished therapist today, Mary Sanger out of Dallas, Texas, a part of insightstherapy.com. And we're going to talk today about this unique thing. Christy Cessna, CEO of ILC, said you need to go talk to Mary about the work she's doing in therapy, but then kind of adjacent, I would say, this mediation work that she's a certified mediator. I'm gonna let her tell her own story in just a second. But as I, in just a second, ask Mary to kind of tell us more about herself. Below our video is a Q&A button, and you can ask questions there as we go, and I'll watch that as we go and share those if we have time and ask those of Mary as we go along. So Mary, thank you for being on this Integrative Life Center webinar and sharing your experiences about therapy and then also this great field and the work you're doing, impactful work as a mediator. Would you tell us a little bit about your background, how you became a therapist? I was just asking that privately, and I'd love for other people to hear that notice because you said you kind of broke into this field a little bit later in life, and I loved hearing those background stories.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first off. And yes, this is actually a second career for me. And I was formerly in the hotel business and event planning and help people plan weddings and bar mitzvahs and big galas and conferences, things like that. So I decided to go back to school when I was 40, I think, and get my graduate degree, and sort of got back, decided to do something different. And this is kind of where that journey took me. And so I eventually then opened my own practice many years ago now, and Insights is actually a private practice in Dallas where we really are geared towards just helping families through all their ages and stages of life. So starting with play therapy for young, children, and just kind of, all the things that you can imagine that might come up with a family through their various stages. Those are things that we have somebody who can sort of help with that. And so that was my vision, and it's a very collaborative practice. Actually, in some ways quite like a treatment center like Integrative Life Center, where there are lots of different pieces, but everyone talks, everybody communicates about how do we help this individual or this family or this person move forward and be as healthy as they can be.
I love that. And I've put a link to Mary's practice, insightstherapy.com in the chat, and we'll put it in the show notes as well. So you can go check out Mary's work. And specifically, I put a link to your bio there. But thank you for that background. And so this landed on my radar because you're doing something really interesting. And I think, creative, impactful, which is you do like your practice and your work as a therapist yourself is around marriage and relationships. And so a couple of years ago, you stumbled. Well, could you tell us a story about how you became or started to think, okay, I could be a mediator in addition to a therapist, and how that background to how that all got started?
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, it's very, very much a part of, so I am a marriage and family therapist. And, for one thing, when I'm working with couples, one of the things to, remember is that couples really wait way too long to come into therapy and to start doing something about, typically, I think the statistic is something like they wait 7 years too long or 5 years too long. I've forgotten exactly, but I think John Gottman originally said that. And with that kind of statistic, many clients coming in the door are actually sort of on their way out of their marriage. They need or decide along the way that they want to end their marriage. And also a lot of our play therapists actually were having the experience of parents bringing their children in for support and help at the time that they were making the decision to end their marriage. And so I saw over and over and over again how the traditional adversarial divorce process would tear families apart. So even couples who would go into the process and actually have, they were cordial, they wanted to make the best decisions they could for their children and their family, knowing that they're going to have an ongoing relationship for the rest of their life. And but somehow when the process got going and they filed a lawsuit for divorce and attorneys would get involved, and it would just become adversarial pretty quickly. And I've had people actually say we ended up enemies, but we started out friends. And I just thought there has to be a different way to help these families through the process. And and there are a number of different avenues, but I also along the way started having a few couples that asked me to sort of help them think about how they should parent their children as co-parents rather than a couple. And we would talk about that, we would do that. And eventually I really landed on the idea of mediation and going and getting certified specifically in mediation. And as a marriage and family therapist, one of the areas that you can practice even under a lot of what we're doing is we are helping people in systems manage their disputes and come to resolution. And that's really what mediation is. And so I went back and got certified, to do mediation. Most of the work I do is party only mediation, what we call party only mediation. And what that means is that if you were a couple, Corey, with someone, and you and your spouse decided to get a divorce, you actually might come to me and mediate your issues that you need to decide on without your attorneys present. So you may already have attorneys, but they wouldn't actually come and be a part of that mediation.
So when we were talking, I think it's been a month ago now about this, I thought, what an amazing, being not the clinician here, I thought, what an amazing, you want like a mediator. I have been through divorces as a kid in the situation, and also myself as an adult. And so I know the adversarial, it's just anytime you get, no offense to lawyers, I've dearest of friends, and I know you happen to be married to one too.
I am married to one.
But when you bring in a lawyer, it just kind of everybody gets tense and all that. And I thought, okay, mediator, I get the concept of it, but how much better to have a trained, licensed therapist that, I know those are two separate things that you do, but like I would rather have a trained relationship counselor be my mediator through this oftentimes adversarial process. And I think that's so compelling, and why I think this is unique and that I've heard about, and a way for other therapists to go be a part of the solution, be a part of the impact. When you don't have to bring a lawyer in, everybody gets tense and start, everything heats up, and instead calm down. And let's, like you said, something very impactful to me is that instead of getting adversarial, like you said, with the friend, like we started out friends and now we're enemies. And I've seen that time and time again, like you have. Instead, you're able to help broker a peaceful, somewhat healthy relationship, I think, through this, right?
Yes, and help them to, really all their, for the most part, especially if you have children. Now it's different if you have a couple that they don't have children. If you don't have children, you don't necessarily have to stay in each other's lives. But if you have children together, you're going to be in each other's lives for the rest of your life. I mean, it's, you're going to be family. That's kind of what I say to people. You're going to be family So really what I'm helping them do is to transition their relationship from being that married couple to being that co-parents, and to making decisions that are going to be centered on the children and that are going to
Mm.
be good for the children and the whole family, um, as well. So it's it's really more about helping them transition. And you
Mhm.
can't, for enemies in the court, when you file for divorce, you are filing a lawsuit. I mean, that's what it is. You're filing a lawsuit. And the court system, the legal system that we have, is an adversarial system. And unlike attorneys, great. I work with a number of them, and they will say the same sort of thing. They're trained to see the other side as the enemy in a way, and that they need to win.
Mm.
They themselves need to win, and that's their
Mm.
job. Um,
Yeah.
that doesn't promote necessarily relationship.
Exactly. Well, if you're going to have to be in each other's lives, and this term co-parenting is something I've learned, thankfully in my divorce, we didn't have kiddos, but I have friends that have, and it gets complicated and messy. And I think to myself, just as you're talking, I'm like, would I rather have lawyers involved? No offense to my lawyer friends, or a therapist that is a mediator, the therapist trained background operating as a mediator.
Yeah,
Specifically, if you're going to have to be in each other's lives for 10, 15 or more years,
that's
and
right.
and
Yeah,
beyond that too, for sure.
yeah. And I also there are lots of mediations that I actually do bring. Um, a mediator that actually is also trained as an attorney, and we may co-mediate, together. Or I'm actually just continuing to have communication with the client's attorneys as we're going through the process of mediation. And to make sure, I mean, there are definitely some issues that come up that I don't have expertise in. And a lot about mediation is some of it is about being creative and giving ideas to the clients that can help them make decisions that they need to make. And if I'm not knowledgeable about something like some tax implications or something, then I need to rely on those people that are.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, somebody that wants to get a divorce still has to go through that legal process and all that too. And so you're working in tandem, I'm sure.
That's right.
Um, can you tell me how you navigate? And by the way, if you have questions for Mary, please post those in the Q&A. But um, I'm curious, how do you navigate your role as a therapist? And maybe if clients tell us how clients typically come in. So maybe a therapist, and then you switch to role of mediator, which feel, I don't know if there's a better word. There's a better, a better word for this, but like they feel adjacent, but they're
Mm-hmm.
definitely, like you were saying, you can do mediation across state lines, but licensing in the US at least is terribly fractured.
Right.
Um, so how do you navigate that relationship? Because I'm assuming somebody that comes to you as mediation may also be therapeutic client.
Right. Right. So it is sometimes, it is a little bit, it can be a little bit tricky at times. It does depend on how the client comes in. So yeah, so there are the clients that I'm actually seeing for couples therapy already, and in the process of that, they decide that they want to divorce, but they want to do it as kindly and gently as they can with their family and children. And on occasion, that will be for whatever reason, I feel like it's not going to be the transition going from doing the work together on the marriage and then doing making decisions about especially their parenting plan, but about their divorce. On occasion, I don't think I'm the person should, that should do that. Not too often, but sometimes. If they are wanting to move towards divorce, and it really just sort of transitions pretty nicely, because mainly we start talking about children, and how they're, what we call the parenting plan, which is one portion of a divorce decree when you have children and you have issues of custody and parenting time, and all of those things those are decisions that have to be made. And it's kind of in some ways, it's just me sort of going through and educating them on the decisions that they need to make, and filling out kind of paperwork in a way, and psychoeducation. And we think through, okay, so how's this going to impact your family? What's that going to look like if you decide that you're going to have a switch off at 12 o'clock on Christmas Eve? How's that work for your 4-year-old? And how do we think that might work for a 15-year-old when they become 15? And I sort of help them think about things that they may not actually have thought about, because when you have really small kids, you can't imagine what it's going to be like when you have teenagers.
Yes, my kiddos are 8 and 6, so I can't imagine. But I think that's so compelling. So I was kind of thinking in a second, you just really totally broadened my mind on this. I was thinking, okay, you're mediating the separation, but there's an ongoing. I can imagine as children go through life stages, just like as you're saying, this isn't a one. And is this more often an ongoing client relationship for you as a mediator?
Yeah, oftentimes. I mean, whether it's as a mediator or it is so there's several different kind of roles and things that I do. So sometimes, one of the things that I think it's important, and I help parents make decisions about, is in the future, when you actually need to make some changes about how you are co-parenting. Wednesday nights don't really work anymore for parenting time, because the kid always has soccer on Wednesday night or something. I don't know. And so maybe they need to make a switch to a different night. And so along the way, there are things that evolve and need to change. So they're in Texas, at least. I don't know that they have these things I think they pretty much do in other states, but there's actually what is called a parent coordinator. And that role is actually a therapist that can be court appointed as the person that co-parent team will go to if they need assistance down the road. If they're having an issue with some decision and they can't come to agreement, then they already have decided in advance at the time of their divorce that they're going to go and use a parent coordinator if they need to.
Gotcha. But that could also be you in that scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's named or whether it is just that, it can actually be named in their divorce, or it can just be voluntarily. They just have made an agreement that they're going to come in and, use me as the person who sort of mediates their disputes.
What? Hey, everybody, if you have questions for Mary, be sure and post those in the Q&A button here. Otherwise, I'm just going to stay curious and keep asking these questions because I love this work. And the benefits to me, Mary, for a therapist seem like really rich, because one, it's another way to, help people, but also it's another revenue, a way to make money in your practice. But you said there was at least in Texas, or where you've gotten certified as a mediator, there's a party only mediation. And I'm curious, what other types of mediation you know of that might be applicable to this conversation? And is the party only one the one that seems to be the most effective from your perspective as far as how you can help people?
So I would say that the traditional kind of mediation, which actually in Texas is most often seen, is where the parties go in, they have a mediator, they go with their attorneys to that mediation, and you usually start at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. You go all day long, and you may go well into the night if they think you're close to making a settlement, but you haven't made one yet. And you can imagine that, number one, that's expensive because you're paying a lot of professionals for all of that time. And in my opinion, it is not, it's nobody makes good decisions under duress. Nobody makes good decisions when it's 10 o'clock at night, or that they're really pressured. It's stressful. It's intimidating because there's a lot of people in the room that are know more about the law and all those kinds of things. And so in those kinds of situations, honestly, traditionally, those mediators are lawyers. Many of them are ex-judges. And it's just a vastly different type of mediation work, because oftentimes the mediators speaking directly to the attorneys, more so than they are to the two parties, the individuals. The kind of work that I do is actually, I actually meet with clients for half-day, usually, most of the time, half-day mediations. And we continue to meet until all of the issues that need to be talked about and decided are complete. And then the goal is, in the end, to have them sign what's called a mediated settlement agreement, which is a contract between the two of them. But that may take usually the minimum of 3 sessions, but very often it might take 10 sessions. It just really kind of depends on the pace of the clients and all the issues that are there. But it gives the clients plenty of time to think about the things that I'm bringing up before they actually make a decision about it. And I think people make better decisions.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I could you.
I was going to say, I realized that I didn't completely answer a previous question, which was, how do clients actually get to me or find me? Honestly, I would say I probably have, in terms of clients coming in from outside, I kind of have a half and half situation. A good number of them come from therapists. So other therapists, that they have been working with them and this couple, or maybe they've been working with an individual and they're referring them to me, or a lot of attorneys that actually I think are great attorneys, and they see the benefit of a therapist managing the emotional issues that are going on with clients, and especially parenting issues that are going on, rather than the attorney handling those things.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I can totally see that. Of course, other marriage and family therapists that will want to help a more non-adversarial thing, for those that are breaking up. So you mentioned half day and potentially like 3 to 5 sessions as far as the time goes. How do you typically charge for a mediation type like this?
Yeah. So for one thing, in order to sort of stay neutral, we call them parties, clients, but each party, each side pays their own fee. So, which is kind of, interesting, because, many of the people are still married and still, they're still operating on the same checking account, those kinds of things. But so every mediator usually has a half day fee and a full day fee that they charge on that basis. And then if they do an extra hour or something, then they have an hourly rate as well. So I think all my fees are on the website, but so you can easily look at it. So half-day mediation in my case right now, I charge, each party would be paying $400.
I
A lot
think
less
about that.
expensive, a lot less
Yes,
expensive than going to an attorney, for sure.
and pain and suffering, of the whole process for sure. Okay, so we talked about time, a little bit about costs. There's a couple of questions coming in here that I want to be sure and ask too. But I first want to talk about the process. And I know you told me like it differs, but how you got certified or whatever the terminology is for it to become mediator. I know you're in Texas, and that probably has some specific, individualized things versus maybe other parts of the country. But would you mind sharing just an overview of that process about how you got certified or?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, in Texas, it's not a specific license. So you don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be a therapist. You can be anybody, anywhere. Anybody can become trained and start to do mediation. Now getting the business that's a different story. But so there are courses, just various institutions or various people offer courses on mediation. And so I think it's a 40-hour, so you do a basic, what they call a basic mediation course, learning the process and the skills and techniques of mediation. And then you, in Texas anyway, and then I actually took a specific family law mediation course where you understand specific, issues to the family law. And so that's what, it's also another 40-hour. I specifically took the course from a licensed social worker who has been doing mediation for many, many years in this area. And I took it from her because, her background and style is probably, a little more like mine, versus the typical courses are, taught by attorneys, and, that it's just sort of a different focus.
All right. Yeah, that's great. So they can, is there a national site for mediation that someone could go on and try to look for resources related to their area?
There probably is, but off the top of my head, I cannot tell you. I might be able to do the work, but their individual states probably also have an association of some kind, or, another option is to go to whatever your state bar association is. And often they will have, coursework, or just, you can start, it's a place to start usually.
That's great. So go to the local or state bar association and start asking around.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so a couple questions came in. If you have other questions for Mary, please post those in the Q&A app. But Alice says, can you recommend a resource for providing psychoeducation information to divorcing couples when you are mediating? So I think, as I understand it, it's like a resource for that psychoeducation while you're mediating, or anything in general you could offer there.
Let's see. So I think I have some sources on my website. So for one thing, I will tell you that on my website, I actually have quite a bit listed. If you go under mediation, under the topic of mediation, I actually have quite a bit listed there about mediation, the process of mediation, as I do it, so, actually the question even, Alice, so the kinds of things that I might refer people to probably vastly different than what you would refer people to if they're doing a traditional mediation. Because, that a lot of what they probably need to do in a traditional mediation is to manage, just manage their emotions and their fight or flight types of responses that might come up.
I found your page on your site and put that in the chat for everybody. It's insights plural therapy.com, insightstherapy.com/mediation. So thank you for that. I found that while we put that there.
Great, thanks.
And then here's another question. So what about, have you ever participated in the collaborative divorce process, and maybe how that differs? Or
Yes. So actually, yes, I actually have done a number of different trainings in what would sort of be a legal realm of working with families. So many years ago, I did the training for that parent coordinator and there's also one called parent facilitator. So I did that a long time ago and did a little bit of work in that area. But then the parent, collaborative divorce process is a whole different process. So I mentioned earlier how so many people end up in an adversarial divorce. Well, there is a whole nother process called collaborative divorce. And in a collaborative divorce, the traditional way of doing a collaborative divorce, and I am trained as a collaborative divorce, what we call a mental health neutral. Texas actually is the state that started the whole process of collaborative divorce. And so it's kind of a popular thing to do here. But in a collaborative divorce, what happens is everyone agrees not to be adversarial. And you have, both attorneys on every case. You have a team, both attorneys, a financial neutral, which is a person who is, again, a CPA or a financial planner usually, who's trained specifically in this work, and what we call a mental health neutral. And we meet together as a team with the client. Everything is very open, and people aren't kind of positioning themselves like they normally would. My role in that is I work with the parents to come up with their parenting plan specifically. So I meet with them individually, and we meet ongoingly until they've made all of the decisions about that, and talk through that. And my role is also to kind of help manage the emotions during those team meetings of everybody, not just the clients. I actually have a case going on right now that, and quite honestly, I have to do more work managing the attorneys than I do managing the clients, and that sometimes happens. But it's I like the process. It's very similar to the kinds of mediation that I do, except that usually these are cases that have a much bigger estate, and so they need the expertise of those other people in the room, the financial person and the attorneys, because usually the estate is much larger.
It sounds like a lot of it is focused, the work you do, focused on the kids and the co-parenting stuff. And then I'm sure another side benefit is just having a more calm presence in working through those emotions. I think I mentioned to you when we were talking in my software business I had previous to doing all this. At one point, my COO and I went to my counselor, but only in a consulting relationships, because we were trying to navigate some really conflict within our team.
Right.
And it was so beneficial.
Well, actually, let me speak about that for just a
Yeah.
second. So, we've mainly sort of talked about mediation as it applies to people divorcing, but actually, I do a lot of mediation work that is not about divorce. So, it's family dispute of some kind, or a business or family-owned business, especially where they, they have reason. It The kinds of mediation that I would say that I do the most, the reason why people would come to a marriage and family therapist, I think, is that they are going to have ongoing relationship. And so they want to try and figure out how to get through this conflict or dispute, come to the other side and still be able to, continue in having whatever the relationship is that they have, which is what I think your situation was, that you wanted to continue having a business relationship together. And so you were motivated to, want to try to do that work.
And having been through, by the way, been a part of a family business growing up, gosh, what a vital see. So now you just said that here's another opportunity too, which is navigating business relationships potentially too, which is another way to use that mediation and therapy background for sure.
Absolutely. And I can also tell you that people will come in wanting to mediate something, families especially, and they want to do it. I mean, they see the benefit of being with somebody who is a therapist as well, but they don't want to do family therapy. They're wanting actually to do mediation. And whether that's just, sort of I don't know, some sort of block in their own mind that they, it's easier for them to say that they're doing a mediation in their own mind than it is to do therapy. I don't know, but
Yes. With a lot of
I also feel like my role is different, and my approach with them is different if
Mhm.
if we're doing mediation, because they're, once I'm there's a very final goal. The goal is to figure out what do they each need, in order to, or want, I don't know if they need it, but what do they want, in order to get past this thing and come to an agreement. One of the things that I wanted to say that is, I think, vastly different with a therapist doing mediation work versus, traditionally an attorney doing mediation work, is that we as therapists are trained really to believe that our clients have the ability to make decisions about themselves and their lives. It is a very sort of, uh, underpinning of what we do, that that they, if with some help, with some guidance, but they know themselves, they know their life, they know their family, they know their situation better than we ever will, and that we actually do believe that they have the ability to make those decisions. And I fully come into mediation believing that they have what they need to get past whatever the dispute they're having and make good decisions. That's not really what happens when, for the most part, in a legal process. It's actually, there's people that have expertise and knowledge, and the client isn't necessarily one of them.
Yeah, I feel like in my experience as a business person is that anytime it gets into a legal dispute, is that most times nobody wins in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then from what we're talking about mediation, I can see how the people that they really care about, which are the kids, can win, can win better. I don't know how to put that, but it seems like it's just it's more aligned with relational than when you get into a kind of a cold legal part. So Donna has a question here. Donna's been in practice for a while, learned mediation 15 years ago, and interest in pivoting the practice to more emphasis on mediation. Do you take insurance for your counseling clients? Donna asked. And then what does it look like where you might have part of a session be counseling versus mediation, or are those just completely, okay, this is a mediation and this is a counseling? So I guess the first point is insurance for your counseling.
I don't take
Right.
insurance. I'm private pay. Yeah. However, so even for mediation work within, my in practice, they get a, it's family work, really is what it is. It's family systems work, especially because I am a marriage and family therapist. I would guess that you need to actually check this out in each of your own states and determine, I have several different licenses, and my other licenses do not allow for mediation work, because it's systems oriented. The family and marriage and family therapy license, it's systems oriented. And so I'm, so helping people, through their disputes in the system is part of that work. So when they get their super bill from me, they actually can submit that for insurance reimbursement. Whatever portion that, it will pay for an out of network. So I don't know if that would be true for everyone, but that is something that they can do. So in terms of in this session, so going back and forth from therapy to mediation, generally speaking, I'm doing half-day mediations, and so it is different in that way. Like I'm saying, either we're doing, if it's couples, couples therapy, or I'm doing mediation. And so I try to, although I will say my informed consent that the clients sign, whether they're signing for mediation or they're signing for therapy, actually has both. So I in my informed consent form, I actually do address both in the event that that client moves from one thing to another. There are some exceptions to this. So sometimes I have, especially with families, sometimes I have multiple parties. So it's not necessarily only, a wife, two parties. There actually may be, 5 kids and 5 adults, 5 adult kids, and 2 parents or something. And in those cases, I may actually suggest that I meet with the individual or pieces, and usually I'll meet with them for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then eventually we're going to do a half-day mediation, usually is what happens. I hope I actually answered that question, Donna. Some of this is intuitive, it's you kind of figure out, you hear what's going on, who the people are that are involved, and you kind of, begin to, get a feel for how you need to manage that.
Donna also asks, are you ever in court on behalf of your clients, or does it ever involve being a part of the court process?
So most of the work that I do does not. I'm not, I have gone to court, but as a mediator, actually, they are agreeing that a mediator cannot be called into court to testify. What happens? So they're specifically, that is not going to be permissible, and they sign something that says they won't do that, and they understand it can't happen. My work as in the collaborative divorce process is the same. And one of the things that's very unique about that process is that if at some point the two partners decide that they want to go to court rather than use the collaborative team and the collaborative process, everybody on the team is fired or quit. Everyone quits, withdraws, and none of us are. It's not permissible to bring any of us in to testify. So that also is not permissible. So most of the kind of work that I do, that's one of the reasons why I don't do parent facilitation, because parent facilitation work is actually, you report back to the court. So all of your records are open and permissible for the judge to see, or the attorneys to see. And I kind of don't like that. So I don't, that's not something I participate in.
Mhm. Gotcha. All right, so we have a couple more minutes in the webinar. Mary Sanger, Dallas, Texas, insightstherapy.com. If you have questions for her, please post those in the Q&A app. So I have a question. If we step back from some of these details for a second, you've been a part of the process both for years now, counselor, helping couples work together, and mediator in lots of these. Three-part question, but I'm going to take it one at a time for you, but I want to give you the overview.
Okay.
If you step back and just say, a part of the process for the couple's perspective, as both a therapist and a mediator, what advice, thoughts would you give someone before they get to this stage? You mentioned 7 years too long before they come to counseling. I'll ask these in separate, but I want to give you the overview. Before, during, and after. I've thoughts as both a therapist, marriage and family therapist, and a mediator. Before, during, and after for couples.
So before they decide to get a divorce, is that what you're?
Yeah, to your point is before we have to get to the point where we even need a mediator or, what's some thoughts stepping back for the process of, and just want to offer your perspective to your audience too. And I'm curious what you have to say there.
Yeah. So I do think that, I do believe that education is powerful for most people. So, and leads you to make, wise decisions, informed decisions. So it probably does mean that a consultation with an attorney is worthwhile to begin to actually understand, the legal process and what to expect. Now, I will say, it helps if you're with, if you get that consultation from certain types of attorneys, I think that will, I don't know, be family friendly is, I guess, the way that I want to say it. But that's hard. It's just hard. But I do think that there's a certain amount, because you need to know what slightly your rights might be and what is realistic to expect. Because some people go in thinking that it's going to be reasonable, I don't know, to expect a lot of money coming out, or for someone to, have a partner pay for all kinds of things that, legally they're not necessarily responsible for paying for, and maintaining a particular lifestyle. And so it's helpful. It's helpful if they kind of have that education piece before they start in the process of mediation, because they're more realistic in their expectation. Let's see, that's kind of the before, maybe.
So before is if you're imminent on getting divorces, a consultation with a lawyer just to understand abroad. Most of those consultations, as I remember or recall, are often free. You meet with an attorney to kind of get, what does that process look like? How expensive is it going to be? What are my rights, to your point? Okay, so that's as far as just that consultation.
Yeah, I think during the process, and there, of course, in today's world, there's also all kinds of things on the web, and obviously you can read all kinds of things, which I think is, helpful as well. It's a great way to get educated about the process. But during the process, I think it is also really important that people probably have their own individual therapist. It's an emotional process. Even if you want the divorce, it's an emotional process. And there's a lot of grieving, and there's a lot of change. And I think that it's really helpful to make sure that you have plenty of support. And the support can't always be, or it's not always worth it to make your friendship or friendships or family your support system, because it kind of wears them out too. And you don't want to taint the relationship that they may have with your ex either. And so I think having a therapist that you can rely on for support, I think that's really important. And then the after, I guess the thing that I would mainly say is that make provisions in your divorce about how you and your ex are going to continue making decisions ongoingly. What is the format that you agree to use in the future? Because it is going to come up. It always comes up. And it's helpful to make that decision in the beginning about how you will, and have it in the divorce decree.
Yeah, I know just from experience from friends and hearing some of their navigating all that is just, you don't even know. I don't even know. What is best for your kids and all that. So having somebody on, to help you kind of navigate that, I think would be absolutely key. Okay. Thank you for that, Mary. Alice has another question in your state. Can the mediator, your state, Texas, the mediator file the mediated settlement agreement with the court system without an attorney?
Well, I can file it. I mean, so there's a couple things. I mean, so if there has been a divorce already filed, so a subpoena, a request for a divorce, so there's an open case already in the court system, I can actually submit the settlement agreement in that case, so I can just file it. However, in the state of Texas, having a settlement agreement is not enough to get a divorce. So you have to have a divorce decree written and submitted to the court in order to get a divorce in the state of Texas. That is not the case in other states. I do know that. I know that in other states, they will accept just a mediated settlement agreement as enough paperwork to get the divorce. But that's not the case in Texas. It's actually just submitted along with the divorce decree usually here. You're on mute, Corey.
Thank you. Just a couple more minutes left with our great interview and conversation with Mary Sanger, mediator and licensed marriage therapy therapist in Dallas, Texas. Insightstherapy.com is her website, her practice website. You can learn more about Mary there. If you have any other questions, though, before we log off, please post those in the Q&A app and we'll get those to her. Okay, Mary, with the last couple of minutes, my question for you is, what did we miss? What things did you want to say and that I didn't ask, or right there that we didn't get to?
Oh my gosh, I can't, I'm not even sure I mean, I love the way you ask questions, and it's just so, you're curious, and obviously that kind of just prompts everything to come up. As far as other therapists, I wish there were more therapists that were, sort of doing this kind of work. I think it absolutely can be beneficial. I mean, to be honest, whether or not as therapists that you decide to formally, sort of start doing a mediation practice or not, just learning the skill and using the skill in your work with, whether it's couples or specifically families, I think is worthwhile. It's definitely a worthwhile, skills to have. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things that I would say.
Absolutely. Conflict resolution. I mean,
Yeah,
we live in a world full of conflicts.
it is true.
Right. Marie says this has been an awesome interview and thanks you for your time, Mary,
Oh,
for sure.
thank you. I enjoy talking about this kind of thing. One of the things about the practice in that insights that, my goal, I mentioned, in the beginning that the goal was to help families through all their ages and stages of life. But actually, that is only one goal. The other goal was to have a very collaborative practice where we also could be mentors to, that therapists that had more experience and knowledge could mentor younger, newer therapists. I should say newer, not necessarily younger, but that are coming and needing to learn from us. And so we always have students that are there, that are still in their graduate programs, and try to provide that as well. So I love, as part of kind of who I am and what's important to me. So I love being able to help other clinicians think about some ways to make revenue and think about
Yes.
other ways to help their clients.
We talk about do good, do well. This is do good. Help families navigate these specifically with your perspective, and you should do well. Like you should be paid well for helping people in the world. So I think this is the perfect pair, specifically for the LMFTs that I talked to across the United States in particular. It's like this just it when Christy introduced, I was like, this just seems like a natural thing to do, and it's a win-win for all that are involved. Well, Mary Singer, thank you so much for your time today and sharing so openly about what you do, specifically with mediation. I know we've got more to talk about. We'll be having you come back because we want to talk about some other things, growing your group practice over the years. I got that little snippet right before we got to go live, but thank you for your time and sharing of your expertise, your experiences so openly here.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun, and
Well,
I come back anytime.
all right, head over to insightstherapy.com and learn more about Mary. And thanks again, Mary, and for everybody for being here. Have a great Friday and the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you.